Tonight, nuclear stalemate, the latest on U.S. efforts to reach a nuclear agreement with Iran. Plus, overnight curfew. Downtown Los Angeles goes on lockdown following days of protests over immigration raids. A look at the political fallout as politicians and the president clash over how to handle the crowds. And trade deal breakthrough, the details of a new agreement between the U.S. and China. Plus, inside the Texas church, reaching out to a community overlooked for years.
The purpose he gave me is a voice. And the purpose he gave me is my hands. And God said, go use it. And I did.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Optimism is dwindling this evening as the window for a nuclear deal with Iran narrows. Good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. President Trump says he's less confident a nuclear deal with Iran will happen as the two nations clash over sanctions and the future of Iran's uranium enrichment program. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly warning President Trump that Iran must be met with force as Israel launches its first naval assault against the Iranian-backed Houthis. Here to discuss this and the Middle East, our panel of experts, Jonathan Sayeh and Ahmed Sharawi, both from the Foundation of Defense of Democracies. Gentlemen, welcome. Great to have you with us. Jonathan, to you first. How important is a deal with Iran for all of the sides, including Israel?
It is of particular concern of this administration, to say the least, because the Islamic Republic is currently a nuclear threshold state, and they do have the capacity to move forward with a nuclear weapon. And other open source intelligence also shows that there has been efforts of weaponization. So time is of essence when it comes to Iran, and 2025 has to be the year that the West broadly, Washington and Europe, make a decision on this issue.
Trump says he's less confident about reaching a deal with Iran. Ahmed, what's changed in the past few months to make things more difficult?
The key issue at hand is whether Tehran should be allowed to maintain a nuclear program with limited enrichment, or whether they should in fact dismantle their program entirely. So the important thing to keep in mind is that under 2015, Iran did not dismantle its program, but was still able to enrich uranium in undeclared locations, and in fact got sanctions relief for it. So currently Tehran is seeking to take advantage of Washington's deal-making instincts.
Ahmad, both sides are talking openly here about military options, and the U.S. Embassy in Iraq is actually preparing to evacuate due to heightened security risks in the region. How close are we realistically, Ahmad, to a military confrontation?
So this measure seems to be a preventative one before the discussions that are supposed to happen over the weekend between the Islamic Republic and the United States. But it's a testament to the worrying concerns over potential military escalation, especially given that the Iranians have threatened to attack U.S. bases in the Gulf and in Iraq.
President Trump, he is now pressing Benjamin Netanyahu to end the war in Gaza and to stop openly discussing a possible strike on Iran. Ahmad, what does this mean for U.S.-Israel relations, and how do these tensions affect Israel's ability to manage the war in Gaza?
Of course, President Trump made it his priority to end all wars in the Middle East, and I think he's been working very hard to end the war in Gaza. Which, of course, on the Israeli side, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is still committed to fulfilling the war's objectives, which is the return of all hostages, destroying Hamas's military and political capabilities. And so we're not seeing a big shift in U.S.-Israeli relations. I think the U.S. still sees Israel as a very important strategic partner. However, if these disagreements continue, we might see a big shift within the relationship in the next days.
Yeah, and Jonathan, on top of all of the external pressure, Netanyahu's also facing a lot of serious political trouble at home. If Parliament were dissolved and his government collapses, how would that affect Israel's military strategy in Gaza and its position in these very delicate talks with the U.S. and Iran?
When it comes to Israel's foreign policy, regarding Iran specifically, it tends to be a very nonpartisan issue. Israelis as a whole see Iran as a major threat given the ballistic missiles attacks against them. So any political change inside the country would uniquely, specifically change their policy towards Gaza more than any other issue. For example, when it comes to Syria or Hezbollah or the Houthis, it's not necessarily a politicized issue inside Israel. But any sort of collapse of the current coalition would definitely not be in favor of Netanyahu's objectives of pursuing the war, and perhaps would lead more towards finding a diplomatic solution to resolve it as soon as possible.
Yeah. While I have you here, Ahmed, I want to ask you about Syria. Axios reporting that Netanyahu has asked the Trump administration to help mediate talks with Syria's new government as a step toward a peace agreement. You know, originally Israel, of course, had branded Syria's new government as terrorists, but now we're seeing some quiet diplomacy behind the scenes. How realistic, Ahmed, is any kind of peace deal right now?
I think talking about the peace deal is a bit premature. I think what's going on right now is a form of security coordination and deconfliction between Israel and Syria, especially in the area where in southern Syria where it borders Israel. However, this was the first confirmation of Israel's intent of pursuing a peace deal with Syria. The feasibility of it would be in question. Especially given that Israel seems committed to keeping the Golan Heights as part of Israel, and the Syrians still remaining committed to the idea that the Golan Heights must be returned to them. So it would be an interesting discussion between the two countries, but I still think it's a bit premature to think that a peace deal is feasible at the moment. Yeah,
Jonathan, do you care to weigh in on that at all?
I think Ahmed covered the main points. I think when it comes to specifically Syria's new leaders, there's a lot of doubts. The Europeans and the Americans opening up economically has definitely paved the way. I think some of us are very optimistic to see Syria joining the Abraham Accords ideally and seeing more peace in the nation. But as Ahmed pointed out, the context currently is too volatile to make an assessment, especially when it comes to normalization or a peace deal.
All right, Jonathan and Ahmad, thank you so much for coming on to talk about the Middle East tonight. It's great to have both of you. We appreciate all the work that you do with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you. All right, in other news, the FBI says it foiled a plot against the Jewish community in New York City, unsealing charges against 20-year-old Pakistani national Mohammed Khan. He is accused of planning an attack on a Jewish center in Brooklyn with assault-style rifles. The FBI says Khan, who was arrested in Canada last year, was working in the name of ISIS. The news coming after a man firebombed a gathering of Jews in Boulder, Colorado, and the murder of a Jewish couple here in Washington, D.C. Yesterday, lawmakers gathered to mourn the couple who worked at the Israeli embassy. Suspects in both attacks allegedly yelled, "Free Palestine."
We see two cold-blooded monsters separated by 2,000 miles, but united in their sick hatred of the Jewish people.
We must come together in good faith as Democrats and Republicans, standing shoulder to shoulder to defeat anti-Semitism whenever and wherever it may be found.
Anti-Semitic attacks in America have increased by 300% since the war in Gaza sparked by the October 7th attack on Israel. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, another day of protest turned into riots over the roundup of illegal immigrants. An 8 p.m. curfew is in effect for parts of the downtown area. President Trump deploying an additional 700 Marines in what California Governor Gavin Newsom calls a brazen abuse of power. The chaos being felt here in Washington among lawmakers. Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London joins us now with the latest. London?
Well, Jenna, good evening. Today, L.A. police officers urged local business owners and residents to report cases of damage as authorities brace for what could be another night of unruly protest. Today on Capitol Hill, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries addressed the recent destruction. Listen.
Anybody who breaks the law, anybody who assaults police officers, anybody who destroys property should be held accountable to the full extent of the law, and state and local law enforcement officials are prepared to do that. At the same time, we respect the right and should embrace the right for any American to peacefully protest and petition their government to redress any policy grievances.
And here's a look at that scene overnight around City Hall. After that curfew was enforced, widespread protest began following a series of raids on June 6th by federal immigration authorities across Southern California. Today, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and other Democrats criticized the president's decision, dispatching the National Guard to the city, a move that triggered a California lawsuit against Trump. Republican Senator John Barrasso called the situation a threat to safety, then condemned Schumer and others for describing the demonstrations as peaceful.
Republicans will not stand by as the violence rages in our country's second largest city. California governor, Los Angeles mayor, call them out, Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, unable and unwilling to restore the law. They refuse. They have coddled the criminals from day one, and many of these criminals are illegal immigrants. But who do Democrats stand by again and again and again?
Protests against recent ICE arrests are now spreading to other states like New York, Washington, with one planned for June 14th in Texas. On social media, Republican Governor Greg Abbott says he's prepared to deploy National Guard members across the state to, quote, ensure peace and order if needed. Jenna.
All right, London, thank you very much. And before we go to break, it looks like Elon Musk is backing off his public feud with President Trump. In a post on X, Musk writing, "I regret some of my posts about President Trump last week. They went too far." Musk had accused the government of hiding Trump's ties to Jeffrey Epstein, a claim he later deleted. In response to that, Trump has said he has had no interest in mending ties and warned Musk could face serious consequences if he supported Democrats. We'll see where it goes from here. All right, coming up, a trade deal breakthrough, the latest on negotiations between the U.S. and China. Welcome back. The White House says it's worked out a new trade deal with China, lowering tariffs on Chinese imports to 55%. That's a big drop from the height of the trade war when President Trump threatened tariffs as high as 145%. Meanwhile, prices here at home have crept up slightly. Inflation rose 0.1% in May, less than economists expected because of Trump's tariffs. So what does it all mean for you? Joining us now, Mark Hamrick, Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst for Bankrate.com. Mark, welcome. Good to see you. Let's start with the trade deal with China. The tariffs now at 55%. What kinds of products will these tariffs affect, and will most shoppers notice a difference?
Jen, I think it's important to level set and use the right language when we're talking about this. This is really a framework for further negotiations. As with so many of the agreements or step-by-step processes that the administration engages in, this is far from signed, sealed, and delivered, and we haven't seen the details. But to try to answer your question directly, as you said, it's a big move lower from 145 to 55%, but 55% taxes on goods being shipped to the United States is hardly going to be viewed as a bargain for consumers. And so we're thinking about all the things that come into the United States that, or at least would presumably come into the United States. One of the things that was really devastating about the previous condition of this was that the 145% tariff was seen as essentially ending the ability to import things coming from China into the United States when consumers have clearly been reliant on those kinds of products. So we'll see how this proceeds. China reportedly is allowing basically 6 months of shipments of rare earths, which are used for consumer electronics and all kinds of other complicated things, including magnets, for 6 months. And so basically they're saying is, okay, we're going to let this happen for 6 months, then we'll review and see whether the U.S. is abiding by its side of the deal. On the 10% tariff that China is going to lower from effectively 33 on goods going into China, that's going to be a big boost for American farmers who are very reliant on that massive marketplace to sell the things that they make to help keep that country fed.
When we talk about the tariffs, they were supposed to drive up inflation, or that was the fear, Mark. But so far, we haven't seen that happen. What's your take on that? And do you think we will see, in fact, see that come to pass?
Well, it's very consistent with what we just discussed, Jenna, and that is, where do tariffs end up? And we don't know what the answer to that is, but we know that this is a primary tool that the president of the administration likes to rely on. It's hard to imagine he's going to lock that up in a toolbox in the future and make them all go away. And when we're still talking about a 55% tax on goods coming from China and the United States, for example. To your question, I think we need to probably wait a few more months. Remember, there was a massive increase in imports coming into the United States to try to get ahead of essentially the higher costs that these tariffs would incur. And so as those supplies are drawn down, then they have to start resuming the shipments. And we've heard from the West Coast ports that the number of containers coming into the United States is still sharply reduced. So I think it's still a wait and see situation. Nobody's going to complain, of course, if inflation does not let's say, accelerate from here, and certainly be welcome if we could have lower inflation and lower month-over-month, year-over-year cost increases.
Mark, is the Federal Reserve still waiting for inflation to go down to 2.0% before it cuts interest rates? What do you foresee there?
Yeah, Jenna, we have a meeting that's a week from today. The Fed is not seen cutting rates then. July is still seen as unlikely for it to cut rates, and that takes us to September. So they want to see further progress. And the readings that we just got, the Consumer Price Index, the year-over-year change for headline inflation was 2.4%, core minus food and energy 2.8%. That's not the Fed's 2% target.
Okay, Mark Hamrick with a bank rate. Thank you, Mark. Next on Faith Nation, the hands of Jesus, how a Texas church is reaching a community often overlooked. A new report from the Pew Research Center shows some big changes in religious growth around the globe. Islam grew faster than any other religion between 2010 and 2020. The number of Muslims increased by 347 million, rising 1.8% to 25.6% of the global population. Christianity added 122 million followers in that decade, but its share of the global population actually dropped 1.8% to 28.8%. The global Jewish population rose by 6% from about 14 million to nearly 15 million. That total is still below the estimated 16.6 million alive in 1939, prior to the Holocaust. Well, nearly 96% of deaf people nationwide are not part of a church. But for the first time in San Antonio, Texas, that is changing. Community Bible Church is launching a service led by the deaf in American Sign Language, giving thousands a new way to worship. CBN's Brody Carter has that story.
For most churchgoers, this is a typical sound from Sunday worship. For the deaf community, however, these moments of praise often remain silent and out of reach.
Third most unreached people group in the world is deaf people. 78,000 deaf people in San Antonio, and no deaf church.
That reality struck a personal nerve with Texas pastor Ed Newton.
My mother was born deaf. My father was born deaf. I was an only child. My mom had cerebral palsy. She was told she'd never have kids. And so God gave my mom and dad me.
According to Deaf Missions, just 2% of the world's deaf population knows Christ, leaving 98% still in search of a divine relationship and eternal life. That's why Pastor Newton's Community Bible Church is launching a full deaf church experience.
So on Saturday nights at 5 o'clock, starting in June, Pastor Ashton's going to be preaching, teaching. Our deaf group will be worshiping. And for the first time in history, we now have a full-time deaf pastor on our staff.
I grew up, don't understand deaf culture. So when I went into this deaf church, everybody was signing, And then after I left, I started weeping because this is my heart language.
Pastor Ashton Luff lost his hearing at age 3. After years of struggling in hearing environments, a turning point came at a Christian camp for the deaf, where he directly encountered the gospel thanks to sign language with no interpreter needed.
In Romans chapter 8, verse 28, is that everything happens for his good purpose. And the purpose he gave me is a voice. And the purpose he gave me is my hands. I gotta say, go use it. And I did.
Now, the very hands that once felt left out are helping others find their place and be seen in the church.
So I would encourage every lead pastor, ask the question, how many deaf people live in your town? And I think you'll be surprised. Deaf people, like my mom and dad, will walk into your church.
From feeling forgotten to being called, these San Antonio faith leaders believe God speaks every language, even the silent ones of the heart.
So God,
Brody Carter, CBN News.
Thank you, Brody. And still ahead, an inspiring incentive to help kids in school. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a convenience store owner is trading treats for good grades. Wael Al-Selwi is the manager at Zach's Finest Deli and Grocery in New York. You may remember him from a video we showed of Wael rewarding a 12-year-old boy for good grades. Well, that video went viral, and now kids are showing up daily to exchange their good grades for good snacks and even groceries. Something Wael says is worth the extra work and the cost.
You know why you deserve it? Why?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? Because you did good in school. That's why you deserve it. Because you got this right here, look.
And to help pay for the food he gives away, Wael's brother set up a GoFundMe, raising more than $70,000. Wael says kids just need someone to believe in them. And he is doing that. All right, we are going to leave it there tonight for Faith Nation. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.